I know no rights of race superior to the rights of humanity. Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was an escaped slave who became a prominent activist, author, and public speaker. He became a leader in the abolitionist movement, which sought to end the practice of slavery before and during the Civil War. His quote, I know no rights of race superior to the rights of humanity, speaks to the overarching theme of the novel Freedom Crossing, written by Margaret Gough Clark. Margaret Gough Clark was born on March 7, 1913, in Oklahoma City. She attended Columbia University and State University in Buffalo and eventually earned her bachelor's degree in education. She began writing when her children were young, and her first book published in 1961. Her novel, Freedom Crossing, is about a brother and sister who have different views on helping runaway slaves escape to Canada. When their mother died, the sister Laura decided to move down south with her aunt and uncle, however recently discovering that she wanted to come back home. While living down south for 4 years, she adopted the views of her aunt and uncle, that helping a fugitive slave is against the law and that slaves are not harmed but instead treated with love as they are given a place to stay and food on the table. Meanwhile, her father and brother, Bert, were helping runaway slaves escape to the Promised Land, also known as Canada. Laura, however, did not know this until after their father was out of town and their friend Joel came into their home desperately asking Bert to help him hide Martin, a 12-year-old runaway slave. At first, Laura was strongly against housing a runaway and being a part of the Underground Railroad. However, as the story continues and Laura understands how Martin and other slaves are treated, she realizes how cruel and inhumane slavery is and decides to help Martin escape to Canada where he will be free. There are a lot of powerful messages within the novel Freedom Crossing. However, one that stood out to me and shows the perspective of Laura was located on the middle of page 108. Clark writes, Yesterday she couldn't have understood this, but now she knew Martin, and that all made the difference in the world. Before, she had thought of slaves as property belonging to plantation owners such as Uncle Jim, but now, because of Martin, she knew that slaves were people, and it was only right that a person should have the chance to live a life of his own, and no one should own a person. When Clark writes that slaves are people and that no one should own a person, this goes back to Douglass's quote. There should be no specific rights depending on race, rather there needs to be rights of humanity. One right of humanity is to be free. Clark reiterates this on page 119. Laura thought a moment. It's true, isn't it? She exclaimed. A person should have the rights of a human being, no matter what color he is. That's the meaning, isn't it? I think so, said Bert. Or maybe that being white doesn't give us the right to take away a black person's human rights. Only, what are the rights of a human being? Laura asked thoughtfully. To be free, said Martin. And to be treated with respect, Laura added. Bert suggested, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as the Declaration of Independence says. Overall, this novel takes a look at one's identity within humanity, comparing Laura's identity to Martin's. It is a good choice for a novel study in a middle-year social studies classroom when taking up a unit on the Underground Railroad to Canada. I was able to tie 2 learning outcomes to this novel from the Saskatchewan curriculum. First, a grade 5 social studies outcome, IN 5.2, analyze the evolution of Canada as a multicultural nation. This outcome allows us to explain how many African Americans came to Canada and how their current location is related to the Underground Railroad. And second, a grade 5 English language arts outcome, CR 5.1. Analyze and respond to a variety of grade level texts that address identity, community, and social responsibility. This outcome suits the topic of the Underground Railroad to Canada as the character Laura in Freedom Crossing learns about her own identity as well as the identity of others and has to decide what her social responsibility is. Overall, this novel is a great read for a social studies classroom as it shares the story of the Underground Railroad and how there were misconceptions about it. Thank you for listening.